Time for the intro. My name is Kennedy Tetour, and this is Groovy Movies, the podcast. This week we cover all things Marvel and Star Wars with special guest, your favorite college and career counselor, Mr. Menke.
By default, your favorite, because I am the only one here.
So I'm just gonna jump right into things. I literally just finished this last night, but I watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. What are your
my apologies that you took the time to watch that.
Yeah,
Not an awful movie, but in the MCU pantheon, definitely lower tier.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I think I have a bunch of notes on my phone, and one of them was that it felt like 2007 to watch that movie.
That I don't think I collectively put that together in my brain, but I think you are spot on. That is a great succinct assessment of that movie.
Well, it was just, I don't know. It was really weird. And also like it wasn't exciting, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
there wasn't a lot of stakes to it.
No, yeah, I had that too.
Which was weird because it's in this place that should be dangerous at all times, and it never felt like they were really in danger.
Yeah, I feel like one of the main issues that I had with it was that my one note in bold is nothing feels like high stakes, because it just felt like every situation that they got into was solved so quickly without any like real conflict, and it was really kind of obnoxious.
Yeah, and it didn't have kind of like the fun, whimsical feeling of the first two Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
You know, like Ant-Man he's the only, and I know there's been a few adjustments recently in the MCU, but for the most part, Ant-Man, like, he's the only like MCU dad.
Yeah.
and yes, I know the core story was him and his daughter, but like I felt like he was more of a dad in the first two movies.
Yeah, which is weird because like he wasn't really around his daughter a lot in the first two movies, especially because like he was gone through the whole like blip situation.
Yeah.
And then this whole movie, it's like she's really mad at him because he was gone that whole time, but then also like they don't really go that deep into like why she's upset about it or what even happened or what their relationship is, which I feel like would have been really cool to see, because like I don't know, I feel like the whole movie was just kind of like, here's these guys, they did a thing, and that's not exciting.
No, it's like, oh look, it's Bill Murray, and then there's no more Bill Murray, and
and then like I don't know, another thing I had was that they introduce a lot of new characters, and they like expect you to get really attached to these characters right away, but they don't have any personality or anything.
No, they're there to be, in some cases, cannon fodder. They're there to be like people for the heroes to bounce things off of. But there was nothing to them.
Well, yeah, and then they also had, towards the end of the movie, there's this like giant fight scene with like all these new alien characters, and then also like, I don't know, the bug people. And they like, it's like this whole big deal, and like Kang starts like shooting people and killing people and whatever, and you're supposed to be like, whoa, this is crazy. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, the guy with the cylinder head's dead.
Yeah,
and,
which like,
and R.I.P. cylinder head guy.
That would have been such a cool moment if if we knew who Cylinder Head guy was.
Yeah, I know.
I don't even know if he has a name.
I'm assuming that's his birth name, is Cylinder Head guy.
Cylinder Head.
I bequeath you, Cylinder Head guy.
Son of Mr. and Mrs. Cylinder Head.
Exactly.
So yeah, do you have any other like general thoughts on how Ant-Man went? Like,
it 5 minutes into the movie, you're in the quantum realm, and you know, like. Yeah, it not that. I mean, and again, you know the characters, the main characters at this point, so you don't have to do that character building. But like, they immediately threw you in. Like, I wanted to know more about like Scott's dumb book, and like,
well, because they reference the book so many times. And they're like, but what is the book? What, like, why is that such an important part of his character now? Yeah,
and like his dumb buddies, like his crime buddies.
I wrote down like. I don't remember the one guy's name, but the guy that just tells all the stories.
Is it Luis, I think?
Yeah, and then also Jimmy Woo.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, when he was in the movie for all of 3 seconds.
Yeah.
The actor Randall Park. I love Randall Park. I think he is one of the funniest working actors in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he was literally on screen for 3 seconds in this movie.
Exactly. Like, it was so sad. And he did have, like, he had a really big part in, like, WandaVision, too. But even then, like, why isn't he back in this now? And, like, because he was a big part in, I think, the first Ant-Man movie? Something like that.
So I don't think he was in the first one. It was more his buddies in the first one. But he did have a big role in the second one. And yeah, WandaVision. But yeah, like, it was just the core characters and all of these other supporting characters in, like, the Ant-Man verse, like the mini Ant-Man verse within the MCU. Like, they're just not there and not referenced or barely referenced. And like that's what's really carved, like, the Ant-Man world within the MCU was this Ant-Man family, because it really, again, at the end of the day, it's a set of family movies, quite literally and figuratively, and we were missing part of the family, and that was disappointing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was, like, one of the main things about, especially the first movie, was it was this new group of characters, and they were all, like, individually, like, good characters, and they were all, like, they had personality to them, and now it's like, here's those characters, but here's also some random person that you've never seen before that suddenly is, like, an important role in this. And also, my biggest issue with the movie was just that, like, the whole reveal of, like, Kang the Conqueror was so, like, it was so flat, and, like, there was nothing exciting about it. They were just like, there's this bad guy. He's the bad guy. And they didn't mention who he was until, like, halfway through the movie, and then they were like, oh, yeah. There he is.
It was incredibly anticlimactic.
Yeah,
like you knew he was the bad guy, and like they're doing the, like, oh, it could be anyone, like the guy, the guy that you got to watch out for. It's like, oh, it's the guy. Oh, it's him. Okay.
Yeah, they introduced MODOK, and I was like, it seemed like it was supposed to be like a weird red herring to be like, he's the bad guy, but then, like, he's on screen for 30 seconds, and then he's like, oh yeah, I work for the bad guy. I'm like, well, that doesn't.
I didn't get what they did there. I felt like, well, we need a henchman, and comic book fans like MODOK, so let's manufacture a way to get MODOK in there as a henchman. He'll crack a couple dirty jokes, and now he's dead.
Yeah. He also just looked really weird.
Yeah.
Which, like, I get is kind of the whole point of MODOK, is that he's just, like, a weird big
floating head guy, but
it was unsettling almost.
Yeah, it was. That was bizarre.
Yeah. Anyways, jumping into, like, my second topic that I had that may or may not also be disappointing is The Mandalorian.
You just brought me on the show to talk about disappointing.
It's all stuff that's, like, supposed to be really exciting, and then, like, you watch it and you're like, well, I watched that. So I, like, very recently restarted, like, the whole Star Wars everything.
Sure.
Just because I haven't seen, like, any of the original movies since I was, like, 6. But, like, specifically catching up on The Mandalorian has been really weird. Because I feel like Season 1 was really good, and Season 2 was pretty good, and Season 3 is, I don't really know what's happening anymore. So, like...
Season 3, I follow a lot of the nerd YouTube channels and, like, Emergency Awesome and Nerdist and all that to try to get just different perspectives on things. And there's a lot of disappointment about Season 3. I don't think it was quite, again, this is just me, I don't think it was quite as bad as, what some of the nerdy things that I follow are. I'm not saying it was great by any means. I'm not saying it was great.
I don't think it was, like, horrible.
Yeah, it was, of the 3 seasons, it was clearly the lesser. What helped me with it a little bit is that I have a background with the other kind of more recent Star Wars projects that led up to it, like Star Wars the Clone Wars series, Star Wars Rebels were 2 animated series, relatively recent animated series that really, like, you got to know Bo-Katan Kryze, and you got to know kind of this pocket of the universe that a lot of this stuff exists in, and, like, the Mandalore lore, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
And without that knowledge, I probably would have been more like what just happened.
Yeah, right? I think part of the issue with me is just specifically that, like, Star Wars has been something that I've, like, watched since I was, like, really little, but I also, like, it's not something that I go back and I'm like, oh, I need to know every piece of information. Sure. And I feel like missing those specific pieces kind of just makes it really like not hard to follow, but like kind of confusing at times.
Sure.
Because you're like, I think I'm supposed to know who you are.
Yeah, I'm supposed to care about you. Like the story wants me to care about you, but without this other background knowledge, which, and again, no blame or shame to anybody. Like it's a lot of lore to keep up with.
Oh yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird too though, because they're making all these like Disney Plus specific shows, but then they're like, it's full of a bunch of lore, but they don't. There's times where they don't really explain it, and then there's new fans who are like, they're so quick to say like, oh, it's bad, and I think it's just because they don't fully get what's going on, because it requires so much background knowledge that like not everybody has.
Yeah, the irony is that the more you expand the universe, the trickier the line is to walk between satiating the tastes of your existing fans while also giving a welcoming and open space for new people to jump in without having to catch them up on decades of lore.
Yeah,
and I can imagine that's got to be difficult as a storyteller.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of goofy. So aside from specifically The Mandalorian, like how have you felt about the other like Disney Plus Star Wars shows? Like
Andor was solid. I like the Cassian Andor character, and sort of just like that, like the underground kind of grassroots approach to the rebellion. I did think that the series was probably a couple episodes too long. The Boba Fett series was very uneven. Ironically, the parts with Boba Fett himself were the least exciting, and the episodes where they brought in Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, were the most exciting. So that was a little ironic. Again, I enjoyed it. Was it the best thing that the Star Wars verse has done recently? No, but I don't know. Again, I'm always going to be biased with MCU and Star Wars. Like it's hard for me to turn that off. Like I can recognize like Ant-Man Quantumania is clearly a lesser MCU movie.
Yeah, I mean it's still like it's exciting stuff to like, I don't know, go out and watch and make like a whole big thing of it. But it's kind of disappointing when like they've spent so much time building up this stuff and then you watch it and you're just like, okay. Yeah. I'm not going to watch it again, but that was cool.
Sure. And I get and respect that completely.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Anyways, aside from Marvel and Star Wars, what else are you into right now? Like, what's cool?
Asking 43-year-old college and career counselor what's cool is a little ironic in and of itself. It's admittedly, I've had a hard time keeping up with some of the other pop culture things. I know as of the time of this recording, yesterday was Alien Day. April 26th in honor of the planet LV-426. I do my best to keep up there. I know Marvel's released, they've got the rights to that universe now, and so they put out a relatively new comics line, which I have not read yet, but I've heard is pretty good. I still keep up with my one of my bread and butter, young Menke coming through adult Menke, the X-Men comics, that's my go-to. That is my home is the X-Men comics, and the X-Men comics going back about 4-ish years. They did kind of a soft reboot in the comics about 4 years ago, and it's just been absolutely amazing. Like they were able to pull in parts that like the best parts of the old lore while kind of ignoring the worst parts of it. Yeah. They put a couple of really awesome twists on a couple of characters, redefine them a little bit, and I highly recommend the X-Men comics from the last couple of years, starting with House of X and Powers of 10. That is your starting point, House of X and Powers of 10.
I'll have to look into that, because when I was little, like, my dad has like a whole collection of comic books and action figures and stuff. So like I vaguely started to read the X-Men comics, and then I was like, I don't think I understand this, so I'm just gonna put that away. I'll go back to Spider-Man or whatever. And like,
well, it's the thing that Marvel always got right about Spider-Man and the X-Men is the relationship piece. Like the Avengers, it's always been kind of a churning roster that comes and goes, and some of the Avengers books over the years, some have been amazing, some were just dreadful, but going back to the mid-'70s or so, the X-Men books have been pretty. Again, there's always been downturns as well, but have been pretty consistently solid. Yeah. And the thing that it's the relationships. The X-Men books have always been kind of described as a soap opera in a way, and although that's a term that would turn off a lot of people, it works in those books and with those characters.
Yeah. Okay, final piece. Do you
Mhm.
have any, like, anything to promote, anything to plug to the students of McHenry?
To the students of McHenry, I, I have my own. I'll mention this more in jest than anything else. A buddy of mine who's also a teacher, not here, but is my best friend and a teacher. We have our own dumb weekly movie podcast.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Nice.
it's called Let's Talk About Flicks, FLIX. Yeah, YouTube. Check your local podcast provider. It's there if you have an hour to waste with a couple idiots talking about either great movies or awful movies and just laughing along the way. Yeah, and because we both work in education, we intentionally keep it PG,
Good to know.
knowing full well that
Yeah.
neither of us want to get fired. So, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that concludes this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. Menke,
Of
for
course.
joining me. Yeah. Until next time, I'm Kennedy Tetour, and this has been Groovy Movies. Yippee. How do